The first time Caleb Dawson saw oil bubbling up through the red earth of the Arizona high desert, he felt his breath freeze in his chest. It was a discovery. Men killed for black gold, rising like a promise from the land itself. But Caleb wasn't alone that day. Standing beside him was Nate, a young Apache man whose calm eyes held both pride and sorrow. The land wasn't Caleb's. It wasn't any settlers. It was theirs. And so, when Caleb wiped the oil off his fingers and said the words that would change his life, they came out soft but certain. "I won't take what's not mine." Nate looked at him, stunned. No white rancher had ever said such a thing. Caleb walked away from the richest strike he'd ever seen, and the world walked away from him soon after. The years that followed were cruel. Caleb's ranch, already limping from drought, collapsed into debt. His wife passed unexpectedly from a winter illness, leaving him with only their daughter May, a small girl with her mother's gentleness and Caleb's stubborn jaw. Settlers whispered he was a fool turning his back on a fortune for the sake of a tribe that many still openly disrespected. But Caleb never regretted the choice, not once. Every evening he would sit on the porch with May, the sun bleeding orange across the desert sky, and remind her of the promise he'd made. Doing right, he'd say. Doesn't always pay today, but it pays someday. Still, someday felt very far away. When May was 8, a wildfire tore across their land. Caleb fought until his hands blistered and bled, but half their cattle were lost, and the barns burned hot and fast. By winter he was down to a few horses, a half-ruined ranch house, and the weight of a future he had no idea how to rebuild. He never expected help. He never expected thanks. And he certainly never expected the Apache to return. On a summer morning 7 years after that first discovery, May came running inside, breathless. "Pa, riders are coming." Caleb stepped onto the porch, shielding his eyes. A group of Apache riders approached, quiet, dignified, moving as one with their horses. At the front was Nate, though time had carved new lines on his face and a quiet authority in his posture. Caleb felt a punch of nerves. He hadn't seen them in years. The riders dismounted. Nate stepped forward and pressed his hand over his heart, a gesture of respect. "Caleb Dawson," Nate said, "we have walked far to find you." Caleb swallowed. "Hope I didn't cause trouble. I never meant to." "You caused something," Nate replied. "Something good." He motioned to the riders behind him. 2 men stepped forward, carrying a large carved wooden chest. They set it gently at Caleb's feet. "What is this?" Caleb asked. Nate looked him directly in the eyes, the desert wind brushing his braids across his shoulders. "Meant years ago, when you found oil on our land, you could have taken it. No one would have stopped you, but you chose honor. The council never forgot. We have come to repay the debt." Caleb blinked. "Debt? There's no debt between us." "There is," Nate said. "And now it is ours to repay." He opened the chest. Caleb felt the world tilt under his feet. Inside were documents, legal papers signed by the tribal council, granting him a share of the oil profits from wells that had been built by the Apache Nation. Wells that had grown into a small but thriving oil operation, all done with strict protection of the land and total tribal control. Caleb shook his head. I don't understand. I didn't do anything to deserve this." "You did everything," Nate said. "You respected what others wanted to steal. And because of you, we were able to claim our land without bloodshed or betrayal. The wells prospered and our people prospered. Now we choose to share that prosperity with the one man who treated us as equals." Caleb opened his mouth, but no words came out. Then May tugged at his sleeve. "Pa," she whispered. "Now we can fix the ranch." Caleb felt his throat tighten. He looked at Nate, voice rough. I don't know what to say." Nate touched his shoulder gently. "Say nothing. Just accept what was earned by your heart." Within a year, the Dawson Ranch became whole again. The barns were rebuilt with help from the Apache community. Caleb hired workers, Apache and settler alike, and let May pick out her own pinto pony, little thing with bright eyes that she named Sunbeam. But the greatest change wasn't the money, it was the bond. Apache families visited often. May learned their songs, Nate's children learned to lasso, and Caleb found himself welcome at tribal gatherings, sitting by the fire with men who had once regarded him with quiet suspicion. There were no lines anymore. No sides, just neighbors, just friends. One evening, Nate visited the ranch alone, watching May chase her pony through the field. The sky glowed purple and gold, the same colors Caleb had watched with his daughter through the hardest years. "You know," Nate said softly, "our elders have a saying, a man's worth is measured not by the land he owns, but by the land he honors. You honored ours, and it will honor your children long after both of us are gone." Caleb smiled, feeling the truth settle deep inside him. "I never wanted anything but to do right, and you did," Nate said. And look what came back. They watched the last light fade behind the mountains. Years later, when May was grown and telling her own children stories of the old ranch, she always repeated the same lesson her father had taught her, the one she had seen proven with her own eyes. "Doing right doesn't always pay today," she'd say, "but it pays when it matters." And on that land, Apache land, still respected, still honored, Caleb Dawson's legacy lived on, not in oil, not in wealth, but in the choice of one good man and the unbelievable return of a grateful people. A return made not from obligation, but from respect, honor, and heart.